Welcome into the box seats with Alex B. Smith and Bob Sullivan here on LateNightSportsRadio.com. We have not been with you for about the last 6 or 7 weeks due to there not really being much to bet on other than baseball. And that's not much to bet on, but we do have NFL training camps starting up, Hall of Fame game coming up, and we got Alex B. Smith right here with you from SportsMemo.com. KellyInVegas.com and AXSmithSports.com. Alex, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. How was your vacation break? I know I made the most out of my 6 weeks off, and after hockey ends, like I said, baseball. I've never been a big baseball bettor, so this is the kind of time to actually get outdoors. See that bright thing called the sun every now and then, because nowadays. It's going to be 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour days from here all the way through June for me. So I really enjoyed the time off to refresh and regroup, and now I'm ready for some football. What did you do over the last 6 weeks?
I coached baseball for most of it. Got into our district tournaments for Legion Baseball, and we are
very nice.
Our seasons are over, unfortunately, for juniors and seniors. However, I'm going to actually take my vacation on Friday. I'm going to Colorado on Friday.
Oh, okay.
And, I'm going to kind of unwind there and kind of take it easy in Colorado. And so, that'll be my official vacation. But while I was gone, I was mostly, catching up on a little bit of sleep, getting back to work now that the baseball's over. All that good stuff. So that's what I'm up to these days, and glad to be back here in the box seats. And
likewise.
And
to make sure to enjoy all of the finer things that the great state of Colorado has to offer these days. So
yes, I do plan on doing that. I have not decided. The unfortunate thing is there's not a lot of prices online or explaining, how it works. So I don't know how much I need to bring or how much I need to budget for that part of the trip. But I do plan. It is legal there.
Yeah.
So I do plan on. Partaking in that activity in one way or another. As far as you have a sale going on AXSmithSports.com. Tell us a little bit.
I do. It's up right now. I just launched it up as we're taping this, and this goes all the way through tomorrow, August 4th. My full year, all football, all hockey, all basketball plays from the opening kickoff this coming up soon for preseason, all the way through every postseason, all the way till the end of June of 2017. $599. That's about well over 50% off of the normal price. That's up. I'm only having it up for 2 days. I want to lower the price to a point where we can get everybody involved, the recreational players. No matter what your bankroll is, this is a deal definitely worth jumping on. So go to AXSmithSports.com as you're listening to this. Check out all my records over the years and all my sports, and definitely get on board with that, because that's a deal that I won't put up ever again probably. I can't imagine I'll ever have that price this low, but I definitely want to just show some appreciation to all my older clients and newer clients as well, and let's get rolling with the season going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking at the betting going on right now, we got preseason NFL going on. A lot of things that people are betting on: win over unders, week 1 preseason, and then college football week 1. What is the thing that gets you most amped up at this time of the year? I know we're 4 days away from the first game, which is Green Bay, Indianapolis. What is getting your juices going, so to speak?
Well, it's funny because it seems like football, from a betting perspective, never ends. I mean, these week 1 lines in the NFL have been up for a long time already, and even with the college games, the great work that the books do out with the South Point Las Vegas, Golden Nugget, the Westgate, they work hard all year and get these numbers up early because a lot of people, people crave football. I mean, it is the number one sport, and it's one of the best sports to bet on. So with that being said, it's funny. I don't like to jump in early on any games week one. There's too much time in between. I mean, you look at what we've seen, Tom Brady's finally going to serve his 4-game suspension. Le'Veon Bell suspended again. Carlos Williams, Rolando McClain is with 3 suspensions now with Dallas. There's too many things that happen in the offseason. And, in either college or pro, to lay a bet, in my opinion, that early in the summer. I know there's a lot of guys who are numbers players, strictly numbers players, who jump in with these games early. But I'm more of a situational guy. I like to, have enough information, enough read on a game where I'm not going to jump in just blindly and betting a number. I like to bet a team early too. Later in the year, I'll just go with a number. But this time of year, you get a lot of invaluable information from Twitter. I stress that all the time, but especially nowadays, and even this is a time of year where the coaches will virtually almost give away their game plan. I mean, they'll we all are familiar with the preseason schedule of 4 weeks, where week 1 starters hardly see any time. You just kind of go through the motions, let some of the younger guys who are on the cusp of being cut or being signed, those guys get a lot of work. Week 2. Roll more of your normal game plan. Starters play a little bit longer, leading into week 3, which is the dress rehearsal, and then week 4 is almost a carbon copy of week 1, if hardly any starters play. It's mostly reserve guys, taxi squad guys, trying to fight for those last remaining jobs. So using that information and then reading up, following teams, following coaches, following what kind of information they're giving out. And definitely following what they're saying about a game afterward. The post-game information is critical, because if a coach is not happy about a performance in the preseason, week 1 or week 2, you'll see it reflect in that team's play week 2, week 3. They're going to get better, and it's usually a team to look toward betting on.
One thing it's funny because, if you're placing bets week 1, we're still, it's still early, and somebody always gets in trouble, or 2 people always get in trouble during training camp. Whether it be a couple running backs smoking weed in the back of their car, or hot boxing or something. Mm-hmm. So there's still going to be another, that's the reason why I would not bet week 1 right now, or anything like that, because, well, 1, there's still 1 or 2 suspensions that could still be handed down by the league for somebody failing a drug test. Mm-hmm. And then there's always injuries. Jordy Nelson, that's going to happen every year. And my favorite thing going into the preseason is when people are like, well, this is a joke. Somebody getting injured in week 1 of the preseason. Why do we even need these games? Okay, well, week 1 of the just because you eliminate those 4 games doesn't, when they're actually playing real games, that could still happen in a real game. So what's the difference in it happening week 1 of the preseason versus it happening in week 3 of the regular season? What's the difference? It happens either way. You're
right. That's a good point. And my thing is, because I know a lot of players have been outspoken about, they want to cut down the preseason. My thing is this: if you cut those preseason games down, you're taking away, conditioning time. Granted, these guys are world-class athletes; they're in shape all year. But I'm saying, as far as playing in a game, it's a different, different physical toll on your body, obviously, than just working out constantly and taking hits in practice. So I feel like we'd see even more injuries if you had a 2-week preseason. And then going into, like you said, the real deal, the regular season games where the contact's obviously, a full action. So I really don't think that's a good idea. And I'm a bit biased, obviously, as a bettor. I love preseason. I love, like I said, the matchups and the edges and angles that you have with those 4 games, not really meaning a whole lot unless there's certain circumstances. But I really don't think they should cut down the preseason, because I think it would just make injuries, a lot more prevalent during the regular season, and then you don't have chance to work out. The thing is your starters, like, for example, the Sunday night's game coming up with Green Bay and Indianapolis. We know who the starters are. We know the role players on these teams. We know the key guys. But working out those backups, working out those diamonds in the rough, the unsigned free agents that could be valuable depth players later in the year when your starters do get hurt. You have a chance to evaluate players that probably won't get playing time in the regular season unless there's an injury or some circumstance pops up. So there's so many different elements to preseason that are important for franchises. It's not just always about giving the starters a workout and loosening everybody up. It's not like spring training in baseball where everybody's got to really get warmed up. It's more of evaluating players and positions. Preseason's for the coaches and the GMs. It's really not for the players for the most part as far as the National Football League is concerned.
Before we get into picks and whatnot, have you found anything on the Olympics? Are you going to bet the Olympics at all? Is there anything in the Olympics that you like or draws your attention as far as betting?
I haven't really looked a whole lot with the newer things that are available with the Olympics. I probably won't be betting a lot of it. Like I said, I'll be more focused on preseason football and getting ready for the regular season. But it's interesting. I'm shocked with all the events that are going on in Rio right now with people flying in. There have been incidents back and forth. People talking about how dangerous the water is, the whole Zika virus scare. It makes you wonder, will the whole Olympics actually go through? And if so, that would be an interesting prop. Maybe an offshore book would post. Will there be any events canceled during the Olympics for any reason? And if there's a price for yes, I would say yeah. I mean, there's a lot of health risks and hazards that we've known about for a while, but if something were to happen, and it's interesting because putting it with the betting angle, I wouldn't want to bet anything because you always run the risk of now having something canceled. Granted, you'll get your money back on the bet, but it's hard to handicap something when you don't know if everything's going to go off smoothly or the psyche of the athletes there, the living situations and so forth. That was the same thing with Sochi, in the rush and the Winter Games, and I bet a few hockey games. And it was one of those things where I was following players on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram and seeing, the things that were posted because it's like, all right, these guys don't have, clean water or running toilets for a couple of days. Those little things, inconvenience, it's hard to focus on a game when you're in a foreign place and all of a sudden you've got other things going on that you wouldn't have to deal with, in a regular season for the, NBA team or NHL team, obviously staying in the finest hotels in North America. It's a different situation here. So it'll be interesting to see, how if everything does go smoothly as far as the Olympics are concerned.
Yeah, if anybody gets murdered or kidnapped or that would be an interesting wager to place. And the whole thing with the Olympics is it's like, I find it interesting how it's like slowly becoming a thing where people are getting pissed off about. Mm-hmm. It started kind of in Beijing where people were like, the city just, uses all these underpaid workers to do these shows and the lights and everything and the pollution and whatnot. Right. And Rio was not in a bad spot when they initially bid for this. But it's just, the World Cup, all these sporting events, sports is this big bubble that's eventually going to burst. Mm. And, the taxpayers paying for stadiums and whatnot for these players, people are slowly figuring out that it's like, okay, this is crap that we're paying for, this athletic event. What does it bring us? It brings us, to the city just goes to shambles. The city can't afford to pay police officers. There's a lot more bad that comes with. You're making kind of a deal with the devil when you're bidding on the Olympics, or you get the Olympics or the World Cup, or bring a sports team, give a sports team a new stadium or whatever. You're kind of making a deal with the devil. Yeah. And I think people are slowly starting to realize that, and it's smart journalists that are bringing attention to it. versus the journalists that are just there like, these teams need to build these stadiums. We need to have the Olympics. I think we should go back to the system of the Olympics happens once, every 4 years, winter and summer, and just kind of, wheeled it down. But I just think the Olympics has become more of a burden, and people are not liking it, not because of the sports, but because of all the hardship it brings on. And I find that very interesting.
Yeah, no, you put up some valid points, especially you talk about also with the World Cup, that situation with in Qatar with all of the different workers, that have died building these stadiums in the oppressive heat there, and they're talking about moving the whole World Cup to play it during Christmas time to avoid the heat, and we hear about the corruption that goes on with both the Olympics and the World Cup, like you said, making deals with the devil. It's interesting. Because you look at these aren't popular sports year-round, at least here in the United States. That's one of the things that always kind of bugged me about the Olympics over time is that you have a lot of people who, obviously, show your national pride. I'm always going to root for Team USA in anything. But the people who just kind of pop up, oh, yeah, like, I'm definitely going to watch curling tonight. It's like, okay.
Hey. Omaha just got the Olympic trials for curling.
Yeah.
So don't you dare.
No,
yeah.
I like curling, and that's the thing. I like curling, and I live here in Minnesota. I know a couple of guys, met a couple of guys who were on the older Olympic teams. But I'll watch curling when it's the World Championships on in the middle of February. That's my point, is that you got all these people who say, oh, they're these huge curling enthusiasts now during the Olympics. And it's like I always say to people, you realize that all these events go on every year in different, scenarios. But it just always seems like, because now it's Team USA, everybody's now such a diehard fan. It's always been a pet peeve of mine, people watching sports and fine, enjoy the events, but the people who want to all automatically overnight become a know-it-all about, track and field when they only watch it, like I said, once every 4 years. It gets kind of annoying.
Well, and I miss in track and field the rivalries that there used to be. Mm-hmm. Like Michael Johnson and Maurice Green, that was the big one when I was growing up. And then there was something fishy when they both pulled up with hamstring injuries. I think it was in Sydney. There was something a little fishy going on there. But as far as like, and then like the Ian Thorpe, like the rivalries that used to be the great thing about the Olympics was there would be rivalries that would come out of nowhere between, like, that you wouldn't normally care about. That's the thing I like about the Olympics, where you're like, oh, I hate that Russian, and just because they have a rivalry with some weightlifter from the U.S. and there's some trash talking going on. I like when there are storylines in different Olympic sports that normally you wouldn't care about, but you're just like, oh man, I hate that Russian dude right now, or I hate that Chinese gymnast, that female gymnast. She's probably not even old enough to be here.
Right.
She looks like she's 12. And so, like, there's things like that. That's why I love the Olympics, is the rivalries that normally you wouldn't know about and you definitely shouldn't care about, but you end up caring and knowing about because it's on TV and it's the one time a year or the one time every 4 years where you should care, or not should, but you find yourself caring about a sport that in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that.
But but I'm with you. If you're betting it, you're not going to want to. If you have no idea what you're talking about from the curling standpoint, you're not going to be wanting to bet it, or swimming.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, if and that's the thing with adding the Olympics now. Like I said, in Las Vegas, you can bet on the point-based events. Basketball, of course, was going to be the main draw, but. If you don't really, there's a lot of sports that are involved in the Olympics where I don't quite know all of the rules and know all the idiosyncrasies and details enough to where I can make a educated wager. So I'm not even going to try to start betting on random things, even track and field. Like I said, you know a few names, and you can analyze some notes. You could maybe study for 10 or 15 minutes, but it's I'm gonna save my wagers for football until August. So.
Well, we'll get into football right now. I do have one more comment. And that is with gymnastics. That is the most exciting as far like the gymnastics for men's and women's. I think is the one sport that's not basketball where I'm keyed in whenever that's on because it's okay. Well, one, the women are hot,
No.
and then number two, some of the stuff that women and men are able to do as far as like the rings or whatever is incredible, and even those like 45 flips and then landing on your feet, not having your ankles explode is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I find gymnastics to be that sport. I'm not going to watch it any other time, but it is an amazing, the stuff they're able to do. I love watching that. And, people might question me a little bit as far as that goes, but
no, I mean, they're incredible athletes.
Gymnastics when it comes around to the Olympics.
Yeah. Incredible athletes, without question.
All righty, so let's get on to a little bit of or some more football here. As far as I know you're not a big over/under as far as win totals go. Mm-hmm. However, if there's a time to place win total bets, when is that time? Do you do it now when the lines are kind of low? And then, as the preseason goes on, they either go up or go down a little too much because everybody's pretty much at a even kilter right now as far as these win totals go. When's the best time to place a bet as far as win totals?
I would say around now. If I were like I said, I've only bet maybe a handful of college and pro football over unders, over the course of my betting career. But I would say now is the kind of time. You could even go a little earlier. I mean, granted, these numbers, like I said, they come out, virtually around draft time in the spring. But I would say now is a good time. You get a feel the early days of how a team's running. Obviously, like I said, injuries and suspensions are being factored in now at this point. So I like to see where numbers move from the opening. Because you will have some movement with prices and possibly even a game going up, a team going up or down a half a game or a full game. But this would be the now into, I'd say, the week 3, and by then you're going to have numbers that are going to be heavily bet because week 3, of course, being the dress rehearsal time, a lot of people are making their, putting their foot down on the ground and saying, hey, I like this team to do this or that. So, but now is a good time. If you got enough information on a team and you feel confident enough, this would be the best time, I think, to look at over/under win totals.
Now, looking at, with win totals, I don't know how much you've looked at them, but, the one thing that is usually a lock is the runner-up in the Super Bowl struggling the following year. And would it be... Yeah, I'm looking at this Carolina Panthers 10.5 wins. There's always, they lost Josh Norman. Yep. Whether he's overrated or underrated, whatever it may be, he's gone. They are getting Kelvin Benjamin finally after his injury last year. But that's a kind of a fail-safe one. Is that team's going to slip the next year because you're so close, and it's hard to get that motivation back the following year. It might come back in 2 or 3 years, but it just usually doesn't happen the following year unless you're the Patriots. Are the Panthers, what is your take on the Panthers? Is 10.5 too high, too low? Do you see them having a drop-off this year?
Well, here's the thing. It was around this time last year when Kelvin Benjamin went down, and I said, I don't think this Panthers team's going to do much. He's one of their key players. This defense, can they step up and perform? Can Cam Newton step up and perform and be a team leader? I don't know. They proved me wrong in spades, making it all the way to the Super Bowl and dominating during the regular season, mind you. So, yes, losing Josh Norman's going to take a hit, but that defense is still extremely talented. And they get a key offensive piece back in Kelvin Benjamin that takes some pressure off the rest of those receivers, most notably Greg Olsen. Cam Newton's got a lot to prove now, again. People were really salty about how he performed late in the Super Bowl and how he reacted afterwards in the post-game press conference. So I think he's going to come out. He's going to be fired up. This team's going to be – I don't think they're going to be your average slump-off, fall off the radar team because of playing in the Super Bowl the last year like we've seen before. Also looking at the fact that they are in the NFC South, I think the Saints still kind of slipping downward. Falcons looked great early last year, then they kind of fell off. I think they'll kind of be more of the same team. Tampa Bay still got a way to go. 10.5, I think that's a fair price. I could see them going 5-1 within their division alone. So you look at that, they've got a fairly solid schedule, and of course they open up, in Denver against the Broncos. That's going to be a exciting Thursday night opener for sure, and they're going to be fired up and want to really battle hard and win that game. So I'm not gonna touch this team over or under, but I see where 10 wins, at 10.5 wins. I think that's a fair price because I don't think this is going to be your average drop off team like we've seen in previous years.
I'm looking at the Los Angeles Rams at a total of 7.5. Win total at 7.5. That seems fairly high. Now I'm not, and with rookie quarterback, I know they have a good defense again, but they have Jeff Fisher as their coach, and what is he? The longest tenured coach to be thought of as good, even though he has like 6 winning seasons and 20 seasons that he's coached. But as far as the Rams go, do you see Vegas skewing the odds a little bit because of the excitement that LA finally has a team again? Trying to bait people into being like, oh, are we missing something on the Rams, and then taking the over, getting fooled with Rams lines and bets? Or are we getting fooled a little bit with the Rams on this selection here?
I don't know if we're so much getting fooled. I think it's more Vegas kind of, knowing their clientele. The proximity from LA to Vegas, you're going to have a lot of Rams fans driving into Vegas, betting Rams games, betting those season over-unders. You're going to see a lot of Rams money come in just because of their proximity. The same way you see a lot of 49ers money. If you talk to anybody who's ever booked or worked in the Reno area, they tell you they get a lot of Niners money, a lot of Raiders money because of the close proximity, not that far of a drive. So I think that's why we're going to see, like I said, the excitement of just a team moving. Like I said, football back in LA, and they're going to have some big games right off the bat. The Monday night opener at San Francisco, but then they come back home, their first home game, hosting Seattle. So they got 2 huge games right off the bat, and they're going to be on the road for 3 of their first 4 games in the season. So we'll get a good test and see if this Rams team is for real. 3 of those 4 games also against the division opponents. They'll play the Cardinals week 4. So it's going to be interesting. They're the team that's on HBO's Hard Knocks this year. So that's going to give even more interest. It's a show I don't really watch too often, but I think I might tune in and check out the Rams this year. I think that'll be interesting to see how a team transitions from moving to a city. That's something we've never really got a full insight on before, even though we've seen the situation happen before. But so I think that will be pretty interesting. But I think this Rams team, 7.5 wins, I think that's a fair price. I could see them going 8-8. Not sure if this. I think we talked about dropping off, teams dropping off that were playoff teams last year. I think the Arizona Cardinals could be a team that we see a decline from. I don't think they'll be as good as they were last year. The 49ers still have their struggles. We'll see how things go with Chip Kelly now, and they've got their quarterback issues still going on with Kaepernick and Gabbert. They got to make a decision there. Obviously, the Seahawks are the gem in that division. So I can see where the Rams could if they could find a way to beat the Seahawks one of those 2 times, and I think they'll handle themselves well against the Niners and Cardinals. They've got some pretty easy games against the Lions on the road. They play the Saints. They play the Dolphins. They got some teams they could beat. I wouldn't be shocked to see them go 8-8, maybe even 9-7.
Okay, let's get into week 1 of the preseason. Do you want to tell everybody about your special again, as far as on axsmithsports.com? Yeah,
axsmithsports.com. It's up now, and it'll be up and valid all the way through tonight and into tomorrow, August 4th. You can get my entire 2016-2017 full year of action in football, college and pro, hockey in the NHL, and basketball, college and pro. $599. That's over 50% of the normal cost for the full year package. Like I said, I want to try and get a bunch of people on board. Get some people rolling right away with NFL preseason. Get right into the thick of things with week 1. We've got with hockey now too. In September, the World Cup of hockey is coming up, so I'll be possibly having some plays on that. So hockey's starting up a little bit earlier. Had some really good seasons in hockey over the last several years. Basketball was a solid campaign last year. Don't bet as much basketball. I scaled back a bit, but isolated a few spots and did come up in plus money in college basketball year. So $599. Go to axsmithsports.com. Go to the packages page. It's at the very bottom. Only valid August 3rd tonight and August 4th tomorrow. Definitely check that out.
All right, so let's get into week 1 of the preseason. We got Hall of Fame game coming up. Is there anything that caught your eye this week for preseason?
Well, with the Hall of Fame game, the way I used to always, I never really bet this game until the last couple of years with live wagering. I think it's a great game to live wager. Last year it was Pittsburgh and Minnesota, and once their starters were out, or not even when the starters were still in, it was Minnesota scored first, and I remember betting the under. It was, I think I want to say 39.5, and cashed easily. This is a great time. Preseason is a great time for live wagering, but I think this game in particular, the Packers and Colts, we know, like I said, we know their quarterbacks. They're not going to take a whole lot of risks, especially the Packers. Like I said, the Jordy Nelson incident last year, and he's tweaked his other knee this year so far in camp. We're not going to see any starters play, more than maybe a few snaps or a full series. So some decent backup battles in this game, but it's week 1. These teams have an extra game. You're not going to see much of anything. It's not even going to be worth watching in the second half, most likely. So the under, we've seen the under money take a little bit. It's open at 36. I've seen some 35.5 here or there. The Packers are 1-point favorite, and I think that's just going off the weight of the quarterback's rotation. Brett Hundley, a UCLA kid. There's some really good things out of him so far in camp, and so we might see a good effort out of him. It's a game I'm staying away from, but if you want to play anything, I would say look more toward live wagering in that game. As far as the rest of the week 1 card, it's the time, like I said, got to do some homework, got to read some notes, listen to some quotes. And you can wait. You don't have to jump on things right away. There's one game I will possibly jump on because of some information that I saw that happened recently. And we'll talk about that in the best bets. But there's a game where some information came in about an hour and a half ago regarding a player injury that would possibly be affecting one of the lines.
As far as live wagering goes, I would advise if there's like an over-under as far as number of passes a quarterback throws or number of possessions a quarterback's going to play. Usually, I usually would bet the under on that. I've noticed in the past that if there's ever bets like that it usually falls under the under.
Right.
I don't have any percentages on that, but when I've looked at live wagering as far as on Bovada, when I bet on there, the preseason, usually you want to go the under as far as, how many possessions is a starting quarterback going to play. And if it's, 1.5 or 2, usually week 1 you're going to want to take the under on whatever they have. And usually they throw about 8 passes and, a couple 3-and-outs, and that's it for their game. So that's what I usually look at. Is I do like the live betting as far as preseason goes, and I'm probably going to start dabbling into it a little bit more this year. But yeah, that would be my advice. Try to normally look for the under on some of these plays. As far as anything, any news that really affects how you're going to bet the preseason? Like, is there any suspension that you're going to be more likely to place a bet on, Le'Veon Bell because he's going to play the preseason, but he won't play in the regular season 4 games, or Tom Brady, whatever it may be? Is there any suspension that affects how you're going to bet?
There is, and you mentioned it with the whole Tom Brady and the New England deal. You got to listen really closely to what Belichick says, and obviously Belichick's not going to. He's not one of the guys who's going to really give away the farm as far as his press conferences, obviously. But New England's a team I probably will stay away from the entire preseason because we're not sure if Brady's going to play or not going to play. How are they going to manage Garoppolo's time since he is the starter? It'll be interesting, to see how those things go. I won't completely wipe them off of the map right away for the preseason, but I'm not looking to jump in on anything. You look right now, Week 1 at home against New Orleans. They're 3.5 point favorite. I see some 4s as well. I'm not trying to lay a price higher than 2.5 or 3 in the preseason unless I've got some really strong information that backs up with it. And New England likes to have a lot of joint practices. I'm pretty sure New Orleans, they train in West Virginia, so we might see them have a joint practice as well. And I haven't really researched how those joint practices have affected the outcomes as far as the spread goes with New England over the last couple of years. But they're a team that I've never really bet on a lot during the preseason, and they'll probably stay the same this year because of the Tom Brady situation.
All right. Anything, any win totals that you're taking on the preseason? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. As far as, is there a team, that you're looking at right now that you're just going to utterly stay away from in the preseason, and probably stay away from in the regular season? And on the flip side of that, is there any team that you're looking at in the preseason that you're going to stay away from but you love during the regular season?
A team that I definitely will be staying away from probably most of the year will be the Cleveland Browns. It'll be a team, and we don't know how bad they're going to be, but they look bad on paper already. Yeah. And we're not going to get any value, I'm sure, betting against them in the regular season. They're going to be double-digit dogs in a lot of games, I feel, if they are as bad as they look on paper. As soon as they hit the field for when the games finally count. That's a team that I probably won't be touching at all. And, of course, that's the only game without a line, one of 2 games without a line right now because it's Green Bay, Indianapolis playing the week prior. So it is interesting. As I say that, I might stay away from Cleveland, but it'll be interesting to see how Green Bay and Indianapolis game plan for Week 2, their Week 2, everybody else's Week 1. Because they only have 5 days in between, and Indianapolis will be traveling again. They'll be going to Buffalo on that Saturday. Green Bay will be back at home hosting Cleveland. So maybe some information worth laying a wager on, depending on how the Hall of Fame game goes. But Cleveland Browns, I think they're going to be a really bad team, and I don't think there's going to be any value betting on or even laying points against them. A team that I do kind of like, and there's a spot that I like now and could bring some value spots, like we talked about, the LA Rams. New scenery, playing outdoors again. They're going to be in the Coliseum. They're out of the dome days. Will how fired up will these guys be? Will they feed off of that LA crowd? There's a lot of hardcore Rams fans that, they have their team back, kind of like with with the Browns in '99 and so forth. It's going to be very emotional, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond to that. And you look, they're at home for their preseason Week 1 game against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, this is an interesting game. Dallas, they train out in California, so they won't be traveling a long way at all. It'll be hardly any travel compared to.
Is the weather not good enough in Texas for them that they have to go to California?
I don't really know why they train in California. I've never known that. I'm guessing it's some deal that Jerry Jones has with whatever facility that they use or something. And then if you look back over the years, they've always had their first preseason game in California, usually against the Raiders or the 49ers. So I don't really know all the details behind that exactly. But the interesting news that broke recently within the last couple hours is that Kellen Moore, the Cowboys' backup quarterback, broke his ankle. He's going to be out 3 to 4 months. That kind of it'll be interesting to see what they do going in week 1. Obviously, Tony Romo coming off of the injuries, we know he's not going to do much of anything if he even does play in this game. They're talking about possibly getting Nick Foles, who left L.A., could possibly start week 1, this preseason game against his old club, hardly his old club. So that might make for an interesting scenario. Looking at Rams are 3.5-point favorite. I expect that to possibly climb up a tick, maybe to 4. That's a game I think I might be getting down on. I might lay the points with the Rams there. Dallas, I've seen some really flat performances over the years from Dallas in the preseason. And the Rams, like I said, might see them be a little more fired up because they're playing in front of the home crowd, first time in L.A., and I think they might actually have a chance to, give the crowd a good show. Dallas might not want to, care as much. So 3.5, I think that's a fair price. I think the Rams might be my first play of the preseason.
Okay. How much of an effect, before we get into best bets, how much of an effect does a new head coach have on preseason wagering for you? As far as a team, like say Ben McAdoo with the Giants, is he going to want to come out guns blazing or try to come out guns blazing, and maybe Eli throws a couple picks? But how do you factor in preseason with a new head coach?
It's interesting because a lot of coaches, you said their philosophy is a bit different. Obviously, going in, if they were a coordinator and then going in as a head coach, so they might want to try and do something different depending on how the team was beforehand. Giants are a good example. Giants looked really lethargic at times last year under Coughlin. So maybe they want to play a little bit harder and get a little more extra motivation playing in games this year. Looking at, I've never been one to follow a ton of trends for coaches in the preseason. There's some that are good. Andy Reid, for example, was the Eagles. Those are teams worth fading. Kansas City has always been a team worth fading over the years, even before Reid showed up during the preseason for different reasons. But those trends are hard to follow because, like you said, there's so many changes with personnel, coaching, and player-wise. So I've never really followed a whole lot with coaches. Like I said, listen to the quotes to the press conferences. Like I said, you want to listen a little closely to those new coaches, be it their first year coaching or with a new team, to see what their philosophy will be, and you'll get a glimpse of it fairly early. You want to assume that you want to start on a good note, obviously, and play a little more up-tempo, but there's some coaches who just really don't care and use this as glorified practice time. So you got to find out and do your research on it.
All right, let's get into our best bets here. Alrighty. So what is your good bet just to refresh everybody's memory, because we didn't really do this during the summer. Well, we didn't do it during the summer because we weren't doing the show during the summer. Yeah. And then we do it during basketball season because there was not much to bet. So it goes our good bet, better bet, and best bet of the week.
Right.
What is your good bet?
My good bet is, like I said, the Hall of Fame game, Indy, Green Bay, won't be really fun to watch. Everyone will obviously be excited because it's just a sign of football being back. But I like the under in this spot at 36. I don't think we're going to see a lot of points. This could end up being a field goal contest. Not sure what the weather's going to be like in Ohio either for it. And that's another thing, too, kind of a quick side note about with weather. you will see delays and possibly even cancellations for heavy storms. And that happened a lot with some of the Florida games with Jacksonville, Miami, Tampa Bay. Obviously, like I said, these are preseason games, so they're not going to risk waiting 3 hours for a game. I mean, if they a game goes halfway and there's some bad weather, they might go in and call it. That being said, your ticket's not official until a game goes 55 minutes. So something to keep an eye on. We've seen that happen a lot in college football too early in the season. So definitely check your weather as always. But I think that game's going to be a really boring game. Not going to see a whole lot of excitement on either side of the ball. I like Packers and Colts under as a good bet.
My good bet is going to be taking the. I'm going to take the over as far as San Francisco 49ers win total goes. They're at 5.5 right now. And, Chip Kelly is not, everybody wants to bag on him, but he is not a terrible head coach. And I always advocated for the Philadelphia Eagles to go out and get Kaepernick this offseason.
Right.
Chip Kelly stay. Now, with that being said, it doesn't look like Colin Kaepernick really wants to, is going to be the starting quarterback for Chip Kelly now that he has him in a different environment. It looks like it's going to be Blaine Gabbert, which is not a good sign.
Yeah.
But I think I think Chip Kelly, other than last year, he's gotten a team to overachieve for the most part. He's got a winning record in the NFL. I think he's good for at least 6. I think it's a safe bet to think that they could win 6 games this year.
Oh.
And I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibilities. I know they've had a lot of guys retire. They're kind of weak on defense. But I think he can turn, as a coach in Omaha would say, chicken shit into chicken salad. So I think he can do that, and I think he will not make chicken salad, but the chicken shit won't look as bad. So I think it'll be 6 wins.
Right.
What is your better bet for this week?
My better bet, it'll be coming up on next Thursday, August 11th. The Denver Broncos heading to the Windy City to face off the Chicago Bears. It'll be interesting because it's John Fox playing against his old team. This is a game that, obviously Denver, coming off of another Super Bowl win, they got, new quarterbacks, all new quarterbacks now. And I like their rotation a lot better than the Bears' rotation. Right now it's Sanchez, and then you got Trevor Siemian, who's a Northwestern grad, so he'll be having a bit of a homecoming playing in Soldier Field. And then Paxton Lynch, who a guy I was really high on last year.
Yes, you were.
Yeah. I still think, I don't see otherwise. I think he's going to be a talented performer in the National Football League. I think at some point he ends up being the starter of the Denver Broncos. So I think they have the better quarterback rotation. They're getting 1.5. They've won 5 of their last preseason openers. So I think that's a fair enough price, fair enough spot where I'd look at taking the 1.5 with the Broncos.
My better bet, I'm going to say Oakland Raiders under. Okay. Now they're at an 8.5 win total. I'm going to say under because there's always those teams, the on the rise teams. I do like Derek Carr. Khalil Mack is the talent that, once in a generation talent. Yeah. However, these teams that are on the rise, there's always an injury I'm not rooting for injuries. I'm just saying that there's always an injury or two that derails a team like this, whether it be to a quarterback, to a running back, the running game is good, but it's a kind of a 3-man crew. I just see this team as, they're still a year. Like last year, they're like, oh, we're a year away. I thought last year they're a year away from being a year away.
Right.
I think this is the year where they're still a year away, and I think it's going to be because of injuries, not because they're not talented or anything. I think they go 8-8 this year. I don't see them getting 9 wins. I don't see them going to the playoffs. I see them being a very much improved team, and even 8-8 could potentially get you in the playoffs in this division. So they could be improved, make a run in the playoffs, and be 8-8. I'm saying they go 8-8, but it's purely due to injury, not because Derek Carr or Khalil Mack is not a monster, because those two are.
Well, and another thing to point out too, we talk about the whole Rams situation of moving to LA. Well, look at the situation with Oakland. They might be going to Las Vegas or San Antonio. They had the whole back and forth of where they're going to be. So we'll have that same kind of it'll be interesting to see later in the year what exactly transpires with the Raiders. If they do get moved at some point, that's going to have an effect on them one way or the other. So that'll definitely be a team worth looking at. And I kind of agree with you on that. I don't really see them as a 9 or 10 win team unless one of the other 3 teams in that division really fall off and have a horrible year.
All right, best bet of the week. We should really I'll give my best bet, and then we'll let the pro give your best bet because you know what you're doing. My best bet. I'm going to stick to win totals this week because I like the win totals game.
Uh-huh.
I'm great at it, but I like doing it and I enjoy doing it. My best bet is Jacksonville Jaguars. My God, 7.5 wins. Best bet, that's got to be under. There is no way. I like Blake Bortles, and I know they've improved as far as free agent signings, but Miles, their second round draft pick, Miles Jack, is not going to play this year. And I'm not a huge Gus Bradley fan. This team is not going to win more than 8 games. My bet is under that. I have no more reason than to say it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're not coached by Jack Del Rio anymore, or Tom Coughlin, where they overachieve or they have a season that's better than it should. They're just crap, and they're gonna be crap for at least another year. 7.5 is entirely too high. I'm going the under on that.
I like that. I like that. I agree with that because I think Tennessee will be more an improved team. I think the Colts will be back to their usual work. Houston, I don't think they're going to be nearly as good as last year. I don't think they make the playoffs, but I do think they'll be a competitive team again. I think that is a number that's a bit too high. I think they got a couple of years away from being a solid team in Jacksonville if that defense can really stand up and do something big. I don't see that happening this year, so I like that best bet of yours.
Look at these win totals in the South. You got the Colts at 9.5, which I think is a little high. Houston at 8.5, Jacksonville at 7.5, and Tennessee at 5.5.
Yeah.
Just take Tennessee off the board. But I feel like all 3 of those are entirely too high. I feel like, what did Houston make it to the playoffs with? 8-8 record? Yeah. I could entirely see that happening again with this division again, because the Colts, yes, they have luck back, but they're not entirely. They haven't completely improved themselves. And Jacksonville is Jacksonville. They got Blake Bortles, and that's he's getting better, but I just don't see that team improving. And Houston Texans, you're relying on a quarterback that's played 3 games in the last 3 years.
Yeah,
and not he got replaced by a beaten-up Peyton Manning for the playoffs. So, I don't know. People were entirely too high on, what's his
Brock
name?
Osweiler.
Brock Osweiler. Okay, what's your best bet for the week?
Well, I talked about it briefly in the middle of the show, but it's the Rams. Like I said, laying 3.5 at home, hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys having a ton of issues with injuries and suspensions. It'll be interesting that, those things really shake up the depth. It means, it creates an imbalance of time where coaches were planning to give players a certain chunk of time. Now they've got to stretch it out and expand it. And maybe they're playing guys who just aren't that good later in games. And the Rams, like I said, being at home, they're going to have a pretty fired up crowd. for that first, unofficially first game back in LA in the Coliseum. And I think they end up winning that game by at least a touchdown, if not more. So I like laying 3.5 there. That's my best bet.
All righty, Alex. Well, then on that note, get our best bets in. Before we get out of here, then, do you want to tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter, the internets, your special coming out, and all the good stuff?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at AXSmithSports. I'll definitely be back on now and talking a lot more at like I said, now the vacation's over. I'll be back to engaging with everyone on there. So follow me at AXSmithSports. SportsMemo.com. I've got all different packages up. That's where you can get my daily plays, my weekly packages in all sports. AXSmithSports.com. Go on there right now. Today, the 3rd, and tomorrow, the 4th only. Full year. All my plays in football, all my plays in hockey, all my plays in hoops. Just $599. That's the lowest price I'll ever have for my full year package. I encourage everybody to jump on board with that deal.
Okay, awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at Bob Sullivan Show. You can find me Sunday nights here on LateNightSportsRadio.com. I'll be having Nick Yossi, Dan Bowers, and possibly Noah Oswald on this weekend. 3 guys that played baseball for me at Roncalli.
Very nice.
And so that's my show for Sunday. Going to be a short show, and then you can find me Thursday night on the Johnny Bobo Show here on LateNightSportsRadio.com. And anything else, Alex, before we get out of here?
No, it's great to be back. It's nice to have the headset on and talking with you again and talking football. This year has gone by so fast. It just seems like, a few days ago was hockey wrapping up and getting ready for summer, but now here we are. It's not cooling off just yet. It's still pretty warm out, but we've got football, and it's time to make some money again.
Exactly. It's the best time of the year. So on that note, we will see you next week. We will be back here every week for football season and beyond. And we will see you next week, talking maybe a little bit college football the next time. Maybe again a little Olympics. We'll see. And we'll see you next week on the box seats with Alex B. Smith and Bob Sullivan here on LateNightSportsRadio.com.